Brew, would a Cincy win make the Bengals real contenders?
Well, first of all, look, I think they got a chance. I mean, like a decent chance. They're a good team. It's a division game. They already lost to Baltimore in a good game, so they obviously want revenge, and it's not unusual for good teams in the same division to split. So they have a shot. But, Nick, if they beat Baltimore, this will not change what I think about the Bengals. It'll make me think they are what I currently think they are, a wild card. Yes, if they get in the playoffs, dangerous as just about anybody, especially for the Chiefs. If they get in the playoffs, we know they match up well with Kansas City, they would be dangerous for the Chiefs. But they would only be 5-5. They would be a team that's only got one win over a team with more than 2 victories. They would be the same team that lost to New England, that got throttled by Philadelphia, and that couldn't stop the Washington Commanders offense even one time. My point is they're up and down. They're a roller coaster, to use your phrase with Josh Allen. So I just would think, look, they could lose one more game. They could still lose a couple more games and maybe not even make the playoffs. But if they get in, even with the bad record, even if they lose to Baltimore, if they get in, I'll still think they're dangerous.
So here's the thing, Brew. This is predicated on if they win tomorrow. If they win tomorrow, you said they could be dangerous for Kansas City. They also would be pretty dangerous for Baltimore. They scored 38 the first time they played Baltimore, went to overtime. If they then beat Baltimore, here's my problem with putting them in a different tier or category than your Ravens if they were to beat them tomorrow. They're the same team. They are both teams that have to outscore you, that have massive issues on defense, that have a quarterback that is playing great, and an offense that is among the league's best. We can show you the Cincinnati offensive ranks this season, and they're outstanding across the board, and that's not, I know you guys always accuse me of, starting at midpoint of week 3 and ending in the third quarter of week 7. That's not what I'm doing here. This is the whole year, and I would argue that now that Jalen Watson went down for the Chiefs, what the Bengals have as an edge going into the playoffs if they were to get there is no team in the conference has 2 corners that can handle Chase and Higgins. The Ravens, I'm not sure they have 1 corner that can handle one of them. So I want to be clear here. I want the Bengals to lose. I think the Ravens are going to be a playoff team either way. I'd like to be done with the Bengals for the season. I'd like the next time the Chiefs play the Bengals, T. Higgins to be playing for a different team. But, Wildes, I don't see how one could make the argument if the Bengals get to 5-5 and split with Baltimore with an awesome offense and a bad defense, and Baltimore falls to 6-4 with an awesome offense and a bad defense, that those 2 teams aren't neck and neck from a contender status. I just don't see it.
No, I think that's fair, except it feels like the Ravens can beat good teams and the Bengals really haven't, but I guess that means the Ravens lose to bad teams. Brew, I'm going to ask you this question. We've seen Lamar really dominate Joe Burrow when they go head-to-head. 5 wins to Joe Burrow has 1. Total yards heads to Lamar. Yards per pass about the same. Touchdowns, turnovers, close enough. Passer rating close enough. But we're in a quarterback wins world. Do you think Joe Burrow needs this one before we're like, you know what? He just straight up cannot beat Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like we talk about Lamar with Mahomes. At some point, he's going to have to beat Mahomes, and until he does, it's probably in his mind. Same thing for Joe Burrow. This has to be in Joe Burrow's head. I mean, the last time Baltimore beat him a few weeks ago was in Cincinnati. So, yeah, I think this is in Burrow's head. I think he needs to win. And, look, there's a part of me that wouldn't mind the Bengals winning this game, because if these 2 teams were to meet in the playoffs and the Ravens win tomorrow, that means they'd have to beat Cincinnati 3 straight times, or 3 times in the same season, which we know is difficult to do. But I do definitely think even if they meet in the playoffs, because Baltimore has had Cincinnati's number, I still think they will win no matter what happens on Thursday.
Can I also address this idea that Cincinnati, you guys are correct, Cincinnati hasn't beaten good teams, but they haven't played poorly. against good teams. The
yeah.
first game of the year, Cincinnati played terribly. There's no doubt about it, and that was against the Patriots. It was a very Ravens loss to the Raiders-esque. Like, how did that happen? Fine. And that's on the record. The next week, I would argue, we're now halfway through the season, they played the Chiefs better than any team has played the Chiefs all year. The Chiefs have trailed for 10 minutes in the fourth quarter all year. 9.5 of those minutes were against Cincinnati. The very next week they played, I think we have to look at that Washington game a little differently now that Washington is 7-2. Say, hey, that's one of the best teams in football. That was a back and forth game. We talked about the Ravens game going to overtime. The one game Cincinnati got blown out in, the Philly game, it was an odd way it happened. With 20 minutes left in that game, it was 17-17. And then the Bengals ran 5 plays before they were down 37-17. They got stuffed on a fourth down, the weird pass to Chase. Joe threw a pick, and then Gesicki fumbled on their first play of the next drive, and it all of a sudden got away from them. But for the 3 quarters of that game, it's a tie football game. So I think if the context then adds you beat Baltimore, that you've got to look at Baltimore and Cincinnati as the exact same or close to the exact same tier of teams, and that if we are going to discuss their head-to-head matchup when we talk about them being contenders, the flip side to that coin is once they get to the postseason, we know which quarterback, and we can show it to you, has earned our trust more. And it's not just, to be clear, that he beat Patrick Mahomes once. It's that one guy, keeps up essentially almost his regular season level of production. His numbers go down a touch in the postseason, being Burrow, and Lamar's fall off a cliff. So I think that has to be baked into this as well if we look at them as both potential AFC North wildcard teams, which is what we would be looking at if Bengals win this week, with the Steelers kind of being in charge of that division.
All right. Meanwhile, the Ravens defense trying to get back to looking like what we expected the Ravens defense to look like. Okay, Brew, here's the Ravens defense numbers. These were surprising to you. Now, they are very good at stopping the run. That might be because they're good at stopping the run, or teams are just deciding to throw the ball all over them. Do you need to see a strong performance from the Ravens defense against Joe Burrow?
I do. And shout out to Marlon Humphrey. I mean, maybe you just say he's saying what he has to say, but I like to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't really hear that very much from John Harbaugh. I hear Harbaugh doesn't. I don't hear him in the post-game press conferences talking about how their defense has to improve. He may say it, but I like Marlon Humphrey saying it a lot stronger there and taking responsibility. Because here's the thing, Nick. I think they, as much as I wanted them to make a move at the deadline, and they got Trey White, that doesn't excite me. He's a bench player at this point. He gives them a little bit of depth. But as much as I thought they needed to make a move, I do think that the pieces to make this defense strong are right there on the roster. And first of all, the defensive front and the linebackers are fine. You mentioned the run, Wiles, how they lead the league in giving up only 75 yards a game on the ground. That's not just because teams are throwing the ball more against them, because they also lead the league in only giving up 3.4 yards per carry. So teams cannot run for the most part against the Ravens, but they can pass against them. But Marlon Humphrey, Kyle Hamilton, like these are Pro Bowl. Hamilton made the All-Pro team last year, so they should be able to do a better job against the pass. They just have too many blown coverages and too many mental errors and miscommunications. And I know, Nick, that's been what they've done for a while.
But they
got to get that
getting
fixed.
A pass rush.
Well, they're fifth in the league.
Year.
Not like last year, but they're fifth in the league in sacks. So last year it was a record breaking.
So I have accepted that Cincinnati's defense is going to be bad. Brew is yet to accept that the Ravens' defense is going to be bad. Yeah. Brew. I give Brew credit. Wildes, what did he not go to there that I was waiting for it? I don't know what Wildes was.
Defense.
But that's
the culture.
Good.
Are you telling me culture doesn't matter?
Obviously not. They're 30th.
No, they got to have a season to get it together.
Okay, so they added no one, and the guys who played at a superstar level last year have not been doing that. Justin Matabuke last year had a career season in a contract year after being a 4 or 5 sack per season guy. He has 13.5 sacks. They give him the huge deal. He's now back to being the player he had been previously. On the season, he has 2 sacks, 10 tackles, pardon me. Kyle Hamilton was in the discussion last year for Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
This year, he's just been a good safety. I don't know how good Marlon Humphrey actually is. I know last year he was excellent, but we've seen that position corner, and even Jalen Ramsey this year, but except for the true elite of the elite, that can fluctuate a lot year over year. It's happening this year to former Chief L'Jarius Sneed. I think it's happening to Sauce Gardner this year.
But
there's a lot of guys who
thing,
at that.
Right? You don't think that's a player thing?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I thought, but the flip side of that is
they got
wild.
they have
last
a new DC.
year. But also last year, was it the scheme making him look better, Marlon Humphrey, than he actually is?
He's made 3 Pro Bowls, though. I mean, he wasn't a one-year wonder.
And so I don't think the Ravens defense is going to magically get better. I think they are going to have to outscore you. And so I don't expect them to have a great performance on Thursday. Now, they might be able to win because the Bengals defense is really bad too, and the Ravens have the most potent pass rush combo in football by far right now, where they might have the offensive player of the year in Derrick Henry and the MVP in Lamar Jackson. So, but I think the Ravens, if they were, and I think Brew might even agree with me, if the uniforms had different logos on them, you would just be like, okay, it's just a bad defense. And so I just don't know that the year-over-year culture of the Ravens defense is going to save the day for them.
Quickly, last game they played, Burrow went 30 for 39, 5 touchdowns, 392 yards. I wonder, and I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot here. No, you can go ahead. Have some Fiji water. Have a sip of that.
Thanks, Wild.
But ponder this question while you do. Last year we saw when Matt Patricia, the Eagles' defense was a mess, but they were really good at one area, and Matt Patricia kind of met in the middle. So I think the rushing defense got worse, but the passing defense got better. I wonder if there's a similar sort of twist that the Ravens can do. You know what? Let's try to emphasize a little more on stopping Joe Burrow, and if we give up 100 yards rushing, so be it. But Joe Burrow can't beat us on the verge of beating us throwing 5 touchdowns. I think twisting schematically. I
mean, maybe.
Josh,
I guess
we gotta grind the all 20
what I would
again tonight. I'm sorry.
What I would say is, if I'm an AFC contender, the AFC contender, who being a great run defense and a bad pass defense is the least useful for, is Baltimore, because they're never going to have to face Baltimore. If I were any other AFC contender, I might be like, well, at least against Baltimore, maybe we can slow down Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
But if you're Baltimore and you play Josh Allen or this team or the Chiefs or the Texans when Nico Collins comes back, any of those teams, they are going to try to beat you through the air. Maybe Pittsburgh's the only one that the run defense is going to be super useful for against. What, Drew? Why'd you make that face?
I think they played Buffalo. Didn't they play Buffalo?
They did. No,
they held them to 10 points.
I don't.
I know that was a good one.
Yes, I understand. I understand that. I don't think that is predictive. I don't think that's predictive of what would happen if they played again, but we'll see.
I do.
All right, let's move on to MVP. If you're a quarterback wins guy, Mahomes is your MVP. Passer rating guy, Lamar's the MVP. If you're a 20 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 4th in passer rating, and throws for 250 yards a game guy, Joe Burrow might be your MVP.
No, I don't like when you do this, Wild.
Why?
I don't like when you do this.
Why? It's 100% right.
Go ahead.
That's a compliment. That wasn't taking a shot at Joe Burrow. The guy 20, he's doing well. Currently 7th right after Jaden and Jalen Hurts. Would a win over Lamar put him firmly in the combo? What didn't you like about that? That was right there, right down the middle.
KW, you have a tough job, but, heavy is the head that wears the leadership crown. You do have to, within the same show, sometimes within the same segment, be objective journalist and then professional takes.
What wasn't objective?
I feel like Brew, and I know you agree with me, I feel like sometimes during your leads, when you're supposed to be objective journalist, you start trying to sway the public and it to your side of the argument. Thank you, Brew.
That's so wild.
And so here's what I would say. If Lamar, we have a long precedent. The last 12 MVPs have been the 1 or the 2 seed, and the last one who wasn't was a running back, Adrian Peterson. The last 14 quarterbacks that have won MVP have been a 1 or a 2 seed. Baltimore's the 5 seed, and everyone has Lamar leading it. And I think even if Joe Burrow and the Ravens win tomorrow, Lamar is not going to fall out of the conversation, even if the team's 6-4, and their record, they are at that point probably the 6th seed in the conference, or maybe still the 5 seed. If you are fine with Lamar being where he is as a non-divisional leader, which, by the way, I'm fine with. I don't like it being a quarterback wins thing, but I know you, KW, do, because last year it was like a WWE championship belt where one guy beat another guy, so he was eliminated, so he had the MVP lead. If these are the resumes, and the team record is 6-4 versus 5-5, we can show you their season numbers, which are Lamar has the slight edge, but it is slight. And then we show you when they played each other once already, I would say they both got A+ level game, performances. You judge that how you want, but they both played great. If now Joe beats him and his numbers are excellent, I just don't know, Brew, how you can have Joe Burrow far away from Lamar on your ballot. That if Lamar's 3, Joe's got to be 5. If Lamar's 2, Joe's got to be 4. Like, I'm not saying he overtakes him, but I'm saying he's got to be right neck and neck with him.
Okay, can I go real quick before we get to Brew's ballot? If he goes on, if Burrow all of a sudden can jump firmly in the conversation with right now he's got 20 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. And he's 4-5. There's another guy with 23 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, not great, also 4-5. No one is talking Baker MVP.
Right. Baker fell out when they fell to about 500. Or close.
So now they're not. So now they're below 500.
Right, but can I just respond quickly to that before you go, Brew?
Yeah.
I listen, and the answer to that is yes. It's not about Burrow jumping. It's about if Lamar plays well tomorrow and they lose the exact way they won in week 4 when they played. It's a shootout where both quarterbacks play well, but this time the Bengals win. If everyone is going to say a team that is 6-4 and a wild card team has the leading candidate, then all the other quarterbacks having awesome years statistically for teams with around the same record have to also be included. We can't change the precedent for one guy because we assume at some point they're going to run down the Steelers, when if they fall to 6-4, they likely aren't going to. So, yes, I agree with you, Wildes, on that exact point.
Okay.
All right. You're both wrong on that point. Burrow would not be in my MVP conversation. Not at 5-5. I'm sorry. And I know he's having a great individual year, but part of the reason they're in such a hole is because he couldn't get him out of the 0-3 start. A lot of that's on him. Having great numbers but not the necessary wins is not a good enough thing. You know it's a rich tapestry, Nick.
Oh, yeah.
So
but 6-4 is
there's
okay.
a difference. There's a winning record and there's a 500. No one has ever won the MVP in the history of the NFL with a 500 record. You had to at least have a winning record. Barry Sanders won it at 9-7. That's a winning record. I mean, it just is what it is. But he could get there, should they get to a winning record. But here's the ballot right now, not projection, as it stands right now. Bruce ballot. All right. At number 5, he's been dropping, not really a fault of his own, Jaden Daniels. Look, he has changed the culture there. They're 7-2. I give him all the credit in the world, but it is a mix of team success and individual numbers. He's playing great, but the numbers aren't incredible. He's only got 9 passing touchdowns. I think he's only had 3 in the last few weeks. And he has 4 rush touchdowns, but none in the last 5 weeks. So Jaden's playing great, but the numbers aren't MVP-worthy type numbers, and they're not undefeated like Mahomes, who's was on the also receiving consideration list.
Also.
So Mahomes isn't on here?
No, he's
that's
not yet.
Spoiler.
Not yet. Number 4, Derrick Henry. This is the return of the back season. And I'm getting Derrick Henry in there. He's not on pace anymore for 2,000 where he become the second person or the first person ever to have two 2,000-yard seasons rushing the football, but he's close. He's like 13 yards away, and he could get back on that pace easily. And as great as Lamar is playing and throwing the football, I think you agree with this, Nick. A good amount of this has to do with Derrick Henry. Defenses having to pay so much attention to Henry.
I think if Joe Burrow had him, he might have one more win and he'd qualify for your whole thing.
It would help. He wishes he did have Derrick Henry. Believe you me. Number 3. Jared Goff. Some people might have him higher, but no, he's playing great though. Last 6 games, a 140 passer rating, 83% completion. Get this, he is on pace to break the record, Drew Brees' record, for completion percentage in a season. He's 74.9%. Brees is 74.4%. All right, at number 2, Nick's guy, Josh Allen. Josh probably has more. I mean, you could argue Mahomes, at least until he got DeAndre Hopkins, but Josh probably has more on his shoulders than any other quarterback in the league that's on an elite team. He doesn't have a legitimate number 1 receiver. I know Amari Cooper, but he's only played 2 games with Buffalo. James Cook is good. He's not a great running back. And that defense is 17th in total defense, and yet Josh has him at 7-2 with 17 touchdowns, 2 picks. And at number 1, we all know Lamar Jackson, just on a historic run, playing the best football of his career. On pace to have the 4th highest passer rating of all time, behind Aaron Rodgers, who did it twice, and Peyton Manning. They both wanted the MVP in those years, so Lamar's the guy. Who would you have, Nick, at number 1 right now?
At number 1, I'd have Lamar. I'd have Lamar at number 1. I'm fine with that. But again, a lot can change Thursday night, and it can be rejiggered a bit on Thursday night.
I'll have Mahomes number 1.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get more from the show and to check out clips from other shows on FS1.